Coming up on this week's episode of the Zennial Odyssey podcast.
Let me ask you, what was an incredibly formative show for your youth?
It was considered a quote-unquote fledgling station.
Well, I mean, it would fit right now.
Yep.
But
that also fits into the category, Rem, where you were saying, like, somebody has to do it first. Back in the early 90s, being a homosexual male was very taboo.
Yeah. Oh, wait, someone's at the door.
Oh.
Hold on, let me just...
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Zennial Odyssey podcast with Bobby Rocks and Remy.
Hi, everybody.
So, where we left off with the last episode, where we're talking about science fiction in the 80s, and we teased about talking about TV shows, that's where we're going for this one. We're talking about the TV shows, how they've influenced me, how they've influenced Remy, how they changed in the... Now we're going to talk about like the late 80s, early 90s, because I think that's when it was... that's when we really went somewhere with television shows that normalized things, and I feel like in a good way.
Excuse me.
Oh, you're very excused. Maybe I can...
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Best yawn I've ever had. I'm glad you guys appreciated it.
All right. So, what I'm specifically talking about is Rem, if I bring up a Fox, let's talk about Fox Television Network.
How iconic.
Yeah, but let's talk about where it is now.
Okay.
Like how it is now. It's now
a nightmare?
Yeah. It's a nightmare. You would never think that in the late 80s and the early 90s, even the mid 90s, like it became like the network.
Dude.
For
Sunday nights, you had Simpsons, X-Files, and Married with Children. That's all you have to say.
Yep.
It was so iconic to sit in front of Fox for at least 2 hours. And you got to understand, this was before we tweeted to each other. So we'd watch it and then get together at work or school the next day and be like, bro, did you fucking see that?
Yeah. Or for someone like my sister, who's just straight up Gen X, like her and all of her friends getting together to watch Beverly Hills 90210.
Or Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah. Nickelodeon. Oh,
there's so much.
There's so much we have to unpack here.
Let's not forget how iconic MTV was.
Yes. MTV still played music.
It was music and like Liquid TV,
and Liquid TV.
Unplugged in 120 minutes and UMTV Raps.
Headbangers
Ball. Dude.
Was that Ronnie? Was it or what was
Ricky Rockman?
Ricky. Oh, Ricky.
Ronnie Rockman.
Yeah, Ricky.
Hey,
Ricky was the man.
I'm Ronnie Rockman, playing all the metal hits.
So one thing that I really loved about the growing up in that era, I was a child and teenager in that era, was that it opened up a world to me that really wasn't the way the world, but what it did is when I would encounter elements of the world that they were creating on like those shows, to me it was like, okay, well this is the norm. And I bring up Fox because we can dive into animation and all that, but I bring up that because let's think of how revolutionary In Living Color was. It was a show started by a black family, but led by Keenan Ivory Wayans.
Who couldn't get their billing on SNL.
Yeah.
They tried.
Yeah. And what did they do? They had two white people on the cast. They were hilarious. Jim Carrey. But
that was iconic.
But they basically ran it. They produced it, and
they made it fly with dancers and urban culture. Like it was the first time sketch comedy had felt hip.
Yes, absolutely. And there's so many things that we could dive into. Things I talk about with my wife, like Men on Films. Men on Films broke so many taboos.
Yeah, it did. Even though it was a punchline, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I still will like see a movie and be like, hated it.
Yeah, exactly. I listen. There are times I'm driving alone in my car, and a thought will come in my head about Men on Films, and I'll just be like, "Hello, I'm Blaine Edwards, and I'm Antoine Merriweather, and welcome to Men on Films." The show where we talk about films from a male point of view.
Yeah, it's just and there's so many characters. Like I think a lot about the blues guy. The guy who just sings there on anything because he's got a bluesy voice. Yeah. Like I remember Alice in Chains on there Unplugged referenced that. And I remember that being great. Like just that feeling right. Like a weird grunge band referencing this great kind of avant-garde black comedy show. But I'm going to say again, I'm sorry, I bring this up to people and it's messed up, but like the worst part though, right? They get one guy on the show who's white and he's clearly a fucking superstar.
Yep.
And here's the other thing. Do you know why he was on In Living Color? Because SNL wouldn't give him. They never took Jim Carrey as cast. People need to understand this.
And they really got to, Damon Wayans got to know him from Earth Girls Are Easy.
Yeah.
Like that's where they
and Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah. That's where they really got to know each other. And
he's like, this guy's cool and he doesn't have any racial pretenses.
What was the movie that Keenan Ivory Wayans did in the late 80s? I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like
so
where
funny.
it builds. Yeah.
And Amazon Women from the Moon.
Yes. Yeah.
That's another one.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have a lot to unpack here. We're going to talk about Nickelodeon. We're going to talk about
Nick.
We're going to talk about how they broke ground, how Fox was breaking ground. I know people shocking. At one time, Fox was breaking ground.
Yeah, no, before they became a propaganda network, they were really edgy in what they presented.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about just the impact it had on us and how it relates to things today. Because certain things today wouldn't be in place if it wasn't for the television we experienced,
the foundation,
and the success it had. Because that's what ultimately it came down to. If it wasn't successful, it wouldn't have progressed, and we wouldn't be where we were.
Listen, there always needs to be a person to go first and cut the path through the woods.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So as always, we're going to play a song. We're going to come back and we're going to dive right into it here on the XOP. As always, everybody, welcome to the Odyssey.
Sad woman, take it slow, 'cause things will be just fine. You and I just need a little small stage break.
All right, so we can come back now. Hey, welcome back, everybody. So where do you want to dive in first, Rem?
I think that if we're going to talk about TV, maybe we should do it in a way where there's a little order to it. So let me ask you, what was an incredibly formative show for your youth?
Oh, then we're going to start with Nickelodeon.
Okay. First, before any pretenses, listen, people need to understand that if we talk about Disney and Nickelodeon, we know what those networks do now. We're aware of people like Dan Schneider.
Yep.
You know, we're aware of Vic Salvo. We're aware of these people and some of the atrocities that happen at these companies, but you need to understand that when we watched them, they hadn't happened yet, or we weren't made aware of them.
Yep.
So I have to be really careful here because I have such disdain for Nickelodeon. Just Google Dan Schneider if you're curious as to why, that's all. But so I just need people to know that what we're talking about now is separated from the modern platforms of Nickelodeon and Disney because I can't support them.
Correct. Yep. So you bring up what was a great show from my formative years, especially as a young child.
Yeah.
You can't do that on television.
Yeah, man. Alanis Morissette was on that.
And for people who don't know, this is another thing we are going to dive into. If you don't know, Rem, do you know where you can't get that? You can't do that on television got started?
I want to make a guess of like SCTV or something.
Yeah, it was a Canadian.
Damn.
Yeah, it was a Canadian sketch comedy show for young children and young adults.
I am good, huh?
And we're going to dive into the importance of Canadian sketch comedy in this because yes, it plays a part. But yeah, for people who don't know, I mean, it was a nonsensical show, but there was so many things like barf burgers, the kids who get stuffed in lockers who would come out and just converse.
Bits.
Yeah, do bits with one another. I mean, the sliming when you said I don't know.
Yeah, they still slime people.
Yeah.
Even though they don't slime people outside of that show, the sliming is still iconic, and that's because of that fucking show.
Exactly. So that was like that was really my introduction to Nickelodeon. And then we go along a little further and we have Double Dare.
Yeah.
Double Dare.
Double Dare, man. That show always made me wish my family didn't suck.
Exactly. And then we get into so we have like sketch comedy, we have game shows, because then we had Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Yeah, living video game.
Yes, exactly. And then
they rebooted that this year.
Yes, they did. Yep.
Okay.
And then we get into the early 90s where I really think whether it was cartoons or live action TV shows, Nickelodeon just like took off.
They murdered.
Dude, Hey Dude. Hey Dude
was another. They had Hey Dude. They had what's that show that was like all that.
Yep.
They had a bunch of like they clearly thought outside the box.
Yes, they did.
You know, Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Adventures of Pete and Pete is
still great.
It is right up there. That's the next show. If you were to ask me, what are your two shows that you take away from Nickelodeon from your childhood, I would say you can't do that on television and The Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Yeah.
Like, but then we get into the cartoons. I mean, Rugrats. My brain kind of farts, but no. Courage the Cowardly Dog was my favorite. Doug was amazing. Yeah.
I don't know when Ed, Eddie, and Eddie started, but
The Secret World of Alex Mack.
What about later on?
Are you afraid of the dark?
Another
Canadian show, by the way.
Another one that's been rebooted, and the reboot's not bad. It's kind of fun.
Yep. And for anybody who's a fan of the show Letterkenny, there is a cast member from Are You Afraid of the Dark that is on that show.
Yeah, Letterkenny's an interesting. You have to understand Canada a little
you
bit
do.
to appreciate it.
Yeah. You're having sides with your best buds the other day.
You're all sitting outside at the trailer.
Yeah,
but
that's why I appreciate you, Katie, Miss Katie.
Of course, you can quote all of it.
I know. I love.
Bob's
that
got
show.
a natural penchant for.
So, a big thing I want to take away from an emerging theme from a lot of the shows that I talked about, we're going to put Ren and Stimpy to the side because, and also Rocko's Modern Life. We're going to take shows like that and we're going to put that to the side. Great shows, but they are not in this category. We're going to talk about a lot of these shows and what I loved about these shows. Like, take your pick. Hey Dude legitimately took place in the Southwest on like a dude ranch with an actual Native American as a main cast member.
Yeah, he had a huge head.
Yeah, and it was just like okay, and then we have Doug. Then we have Doug where everybody's a different color, but
it's never addressed as a weird thing.
Yeah, Skeeter is actually black, right?
I mean, it makes sense, right?
So, but in the show, for people who don't know, Skeeter was green. And what that show was kind of telling you is it was just like...
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. It really doesn't matter. And we can talk about All That because All That was a sketch comedy for teenagers.
Those actors still, most of them are doing stuff.
Yeah.
Keenan took over SNL.
Yes, he did.
Longest running cast member now.
And Good Burger. the spinoff from that. And that was a multi-cultural show. You had, and I wish I remembered her name, She's the overweight one, but who was on the
on all that. Yeah, I can't.
She was on all that, but then she went on to the Steve Harvey show.
Yeah, she's hilarious.
After that, yeah, she's phenomenal. She's she writes.
That's what
for
you
like
do when
comedy
you get
now.
those gigs.
But to me, like a lot of these takeaways that I got there as a child watching the shows is because it's impressionable to a child is like this connection, this togetherness. It doesn't matter how you look, doesn't matter what your background is. What matters is like coming together, and it's like, okay, great. All right.
And by them presenting it as being so not weird, it normalized it and made it not weird for us.
And that's why Nickelodeon was very influential, because it did that for children, because it was a TV network for children. Excuse me. Yeah, and now we can talk about like Rocko's Modern Life and Ren and Stimpy,
Stuff that was just cuts above.
Yeah, it was cuts above, and you look back on it and you're like, why the fuck was this even on like a children's TV on a Saturday afternoon?
Because it was an avant-garde network. That was the thing.
It was.
They were like, we're laying a new foundation for kid entertainment, and we're going to be able to define what that is.
Yep.
You know, you got to understand too that like I worship Adult Swim. Adult Swim would not exist.
Yeah, you're right. It would not. It would not exist. But now let's go to Fox. Let's go back to Fox.
All right.
So in the late 80s is really when Fox just it was considered a quote unquote fledgling station, because it had to go up against like NBC, CBS, ABC. Those were the three
it
main
wasn't
networks.
hot at first. Like people got to understand that. Like Tracy Ullman show. That's a perfect example. Brilliant sketch.
Ahead of its time.
Well, I mean, it would fit right now.
Yep.
But
that also fits into the category, Rem, where you were saying like, somebody has to do it first.
Yeah.
Tracy Ullman.
And a lot of people don't know that The Simpsons was a bit on her show that people responded to so hugely that it got spun off.
Was the Ben Stiller show on Fox?
Yeah, it was. And that's one of my favorite sketch comedy shows of all time.
Can we talk about all the talent that was? Bob Odenkirk was on that
Bob
show.
Odenkirk, Janine Garofalo, Andy Dick, Ben Stiller, David Cross. It was literally like a high school college class of the funniest motherfuckers on the planet. And that's why, like, I still watch that show once a year. YouTube has every episode.
Yes. Yep.
And I'm just like, there are certain bits that kill me. Like the Kill Doug Shafke one, where the rapper just picks a random guy in the suburbs to write a battle rap on.
Yep.
It was, you could tell it was young. It was full of piss and vinegar, and just like everything beautiful, it burnt out too quick.
Yep. And my favorite thing, because it is my favorite thing, whether it's music, or whether it's TV show, all that, when you are at that early point and you're hungry and it's raw.
Yeah.
And it's about the experimentation.
They're kids.
It's about the experimentation.
They're kids. They're on LA Boulevard during the show in between bits. Like it's anarchy.
So we can go back.
Should we talk about how Andy Dick went from having so much potential to being one of the creepiest guys in Hollywood?
Absolutely.
Or is that all we're going to say? That's fair. That sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's fair.
Because the rest of them all are still doing so well, and he's famously one of the creepiest guys in Hollywood.
Yes, yeah, he's still living off of the fame of like news. He was on. Was he on News Radio?
Yeah,
yeah.
That's another show that had too much talent.
Yep. Yeah, and that show would have gone on if Phil Hartman hadn't died. So
that was fucked.
But yeah, let's go back to Fox. So for me, the first big show on Fox that was live action that had traction was Married with Children.
Yeah, it was the first time a lot of us who grew up in dysfunctional families saw that represented accurately.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And most people give credit to Roseanne, that was the first show like that. No.
And Roseanne wasn't as edgy. It didn't have that edge. Like, I understand that Roseanne was an honest portrayal of that, but it was more of a sitcom. And I know Married with Children was super, super exaggerated. But man, the husband who didn't get sex.
What's the best form of flattery? Is satire.
Of course.
Yeah, and that's what Married with Children was about, you know?
Now the shoe salesman. People always joke now that
kids gather round for Tang sandwiches.
But like what they say, what kind of shoe store had Al Bundy buying a 3-story house in California? Oh yeah, I forgot it. The world used to be normal.
Yeah.
Probably bought it for $75,000.
All right. So then we also have, when we touched upon it, in Living Color, then...
Oh, I didn't. But the irony is that the guy who got most famous from Living Color was a white guy.
Yeah.
It's like the Eminem syndrome, where Eminem's like one of the most famous rappers, and he's like, I didn't start this, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt bad for the Wayans, but I mean, they carved their own path, but Carrie became the icon.
He did. You're right.
You know?
And I know the show, they backed away from the show because as more successful it got, the more control the network tried to take over.
Yeah.
And they were like, you know,
We're good.
No. Do you remember the Men on Films that was live during the Super Bowl halftime?
No.
Like it was about theirs was about that, and I mean that stuff just was revolutionary.
Yeah, improv, right?
Yeah. And they're trying not to laugh,
Of course.
like because unlike their skits, unlike the recorded skits,
edits.
one take.
Yeah.
One take, and like David Allen, I think David Allen Greer does not get enough credit for like
just being damn good.
Yeah. Like he would just turn it into Antoine Merriweather's like he would turn, he would smile, he would cut it off, and they'd come back and be like, you need to stop. He just right into the joke.
But they were also the lexicon, so they felt the world loving them, and that made them give back better.
Yep.
You know?
But let's talk about other shows that Fox did that were just great. We talked about the X-Files.
Yeah.
Living Single.
Yeah.
Living Single, New York Undercover. I just and I bring up these shows because what it did normalizing for me is what I'm talking about is like minorities, black people.
Yeah,
like
just urban culture that we wouldn't have been exposed to.
Exactly. And I bring up
227 and shit.
And I bring up Living Single because to me it was just okay, there's 4 women that live together. It's because they can't afford living on their own. And there's these 2 guys that are their friends. Yeah, they're not hookup artists or anything like that. They're their friends who either live in the building in a different place or they're just a friend.
I mean, wasn't it kind of the blueprint of Friends? Isn't it the exact same show?
Yeah. And I mean, that show had Queen Latifah on it.
I know. It was a great cast.
Had what's her name from The Facts of Life? Everyone thought her career was over, and then boom, Living Single.
Man,
and it was like, no, I have more than one trick.
Yeah, don't count me out.
Martin
was so iconic.
Yes. And I bring up these because
I laugh just thinking about that show.
But I bring up these, and I bring up New York Undercover because I don't care what people say. That was the first gritty police show that was like on regular TV.
It's so normalized now.
People will talk about NYPD Blue or Hill Street Blues and all this shit, and I'll be like, no.
Bring up The Grandfather.
It was New York Undercover. Yeah. It was a sergeant who was like a Puerto Rican woman. It was an African American detective and another Puerto Rican
procedural too.
Yeah, yes, and it was them literally going undercover because they could blend in with
because they knew how to act like normal people.
Yeah, and I mean, like those shows were gritty. They were cutting edge.
Yeah, Cops.
Yeah, Cops. Yep. Yeah, Sherry Lynn and I talked about Cops on as far as the reality angle of it.
Yeah,
and I mean
questionable.
Because,
but it's great. It was great TV.
So I bring these up because this is what I grew up with. So to me, it normalized a lot of things. They talked about things like I know I'm jumping all over the place, but let's go back to Men on Films. Back in the early 90s, being a homosexual male was very taboo.
Yeah.
But in the black community, it was like taboo times 100.
Yeah.
And here they are, just like
openly.
You know what? They're like, guess what? There are gay black men. It exists.
Yeah, and like enjoying the queenliness and the fabulosity of it. You know, it's like, and the theatrics they exaggerated the theatrics so that when you met gay people in real life, it was nothing like that, but there was still an air of comfort.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, I think that in Living Color, racially, I mean, they did the bit with Jim Carrey as
are you more Blaine Edwards or Antoine Merriweather?
Bob's on some shit right now, guys. But like Jim Carrey doing the that dude who got his head beaten in with the
Reginald Denny.
David Allen Greer did Rodney King.
Rodney King, yes.
Yeah, but even for them coming out, like Jim Carrey came out with like his eyes crossed and like a piece of wood embedded in his head.
Yep.
And it's just like, you know what? That takes balls for them to laugh at their own shit.
And for people who don't know, that was like literally right after the LA riots.
Yeah, that was pretty much during them practically.
Yeah, that's stuff that wouldn't happen today.
No, there was a level of punk rock in that show, and there was a level of, because they'd bring on urban like hip hop acts to expose them to white culture, like Tribe Called Quest and shit.
Tribe.
And I'd watch it with my friends, and I'd always just be like, man, like here's what Living Color did for me, and I'm grateful because it changed the way I sort of live. I watch Living Color, I'm sitting home with my long ass hair and my weird jeans and my flannel, and I'm like, oh, I'm not remotely cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not remotely cool. I thought I was cool. I'm like a cliche. It's like, I'm not remotely cool.
And my takeaway from it was like, oh, like all these people that are different than me are all getting along and all these things
Yeah.
and wow, it changed. It influenced my sense of humor. It influenced.
Let me just call you out. You're married to a black woman. It
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
influenced a
Yeah.
lot, you know, and
Yeah,
it
that's
opened
true.
doors for
Yep.
you to be aware of the normalcy between races and genders.
Now
Jennifer
let's-
Lopez was a dancer on that show.
Oh, she was
too.
a fly girl.
Yeah.
Yes, she was.
I don't know if you could have fly girls nowadays.
No, unfortunately, no.
It is kind of unfortunate.
Yeah. But now let's go back to a sketch comedy show that people don't give enough credit to. It is a Canadian sketch comedy show.
SCTV.
And I think you know where I'm going.
Yeah, is it Second City?
Yeah. No. This is for how cutting edge this was. And they went everywhere. If I say the movie that they created, you're going to...
Oh, National Lampoon.
Yeah. No.
The Groundlings?
No. If I say Brain Candy.
Oh, Kids in the Hall.
Very Kids in the Hall.
Oh my
Yep.
God, yeah.
First off, that is my favorite theme song to a show, by the way.
The Kids in the Hall theme?
Yeah. What is something men on a strange men on a strange planet?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I bring them up because I watched them when they were starting to get that crossover into the US. And so you had 4 men.
One who was openly gay.
Yeah, you had 4 men, one who was openly gay, and one of their segments was him like lampooning the gay community.
Yeah.
Like he's making fun of himself, but at the same time, like making fun of all these things.
And he's not making fun of it in a way that's cruel. He's making fun of it in a way that's observant. Oh my God, our studio just got invaded by 3 terrorists. All right, I'm not going to follow through with that joke. I'm just knocking shit over. I apologize. But yeah, and that's another example of being exposed to things. I mean, Kids in the Hall was just irreverent. It was a different kind of humor.
Yeah, what is it? 47 Helens agree.
But like you gotta frame this for people because we're talking foreign right now. They
Yeah.
probably have no idea what it even is.
So the Kids in the Hall, it's a sketch comedy show by 4 gentlemen who were Canadian. So it was started on Canadian TV. And I bring that up because they didn't bring in extra. They did at some point, but they primarily played every single role. They would play the role of women.
every kid, every girl,
Yeah,
every
they would play the role of kids.
child.
They would play the gay. They would play all these roles. And by the way, they played women well.
They played women well.
They played
yeah.
women well. And when I say play women, I mean
Sometimes you couldn't tell.
yeah, I'm literally saying this is literally one of their skits. Like it's 2 women that work in like an operator for like AT&T. Like they work in the office, and it's just them about just like the monotony.
Yeah, just existing.
Yeah, but it's just them being over the top, like females. And again, they like. I know this is right up Rem's alley. This is also up my alley too. Like without the Kids in the Hall, there is no the whitest kids you know.
Oh no, of course.
No,
I
no.
mean,
And what I love about the Kids in the Hall is the Kids in the Hall normalized. They normalized so much for me. They normalized the like homosexuality. They normalized cross dressing. Like
yeah, all of it, you know, and they did it in a way where they didn't frame that stuff
tasteful
as the punchline.
Yeah, it was tasteful.
They didn't frame it as the punchline.
Yeah.
So, and I think, I think that what we were raised on, a lot of what we talked about today, especially with the comedy, is integral into our ability to make fun of ourselves and laugh at ourselves really, really well. I mean, me and Bob's main source of humor is self-deprecating.
Self-deprecation.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's comforting.
For people who don't know, I mean, like I talk about it. I was bullied at one point when I was in school. I think sadly looking back, I mean, yeah, if you were a popular kid, you weren't bullied, but like not everyone's a popular kid. In fact, most people aren't the popular kids. And what did I do to kind of get around that? Because the bullying for me was just like ha ha ha, you got a bowl cut, your head looks like a dick, and you're fat and you have bitch tits. Like, and so what did I do? I just
learned to joke better.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? No one can make fun of me better than I can make fun of myself.
That's it.
And so for many people, that disarmed them. And they moved on to somebody else who was, and for other people, it was literally, they knew it got under my skin. And then if they knew it didn't get under my skin, they were like, he's not fun.
Yeah, I mean, right now, more than anything, especially with my last profile on TikTok, a lot of it was just like, it was people, girls are always cool, dudes always hate. It's a jealousy thing. It is what it is. But it would be so many, oh, this guy's old. This guy's geriatric. And I finally made a video saying, cool. That's like saying I'm white.
Yeah.
No shit, I'm old. Is that supposed to bother me that I'm more comfortable in my skin than all y'all?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, but that's like again, it's like, yeah, cool. You think I'm 40, I'm 70. Fuck you. I'm on my deathbed typing this. Like, that stuff is never. As soon as I learned to own being chunky too, as a kid, that was hugely empowering. It's like, oh wow, you're so original. It's like that scene from Roxanne where Steve Martin's playing Cyrano de Bergerac, and he gets burned about the nose thing.
Yeah.
He's like, yo, that sucked. Like, here's 20 burns that are better than your fucking burn.
And boom.
Yeah, and that's always how I do it too. I'm like, oh, look at this person being so novel, you know? And any burn anyone can do because of that, I've learned burns that are just more poignant.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You know? But you're right. If you own your shit, it stops making it a flaw. It becomes a strength.
And so if I can tie that in,
I love being a chunky boy.
Yeah. Listen, I eat well. Okay. Okay. Like,
Chunky Boys is going to be the name of the podcast starting next month.
Chunky Boys, Chunky Podcast. You know? the
Probably a pretty good name, actually.
Rox and Remy's Rocky Road Podcast.
Right, we eat ice cream.
Yeah. But another area where, like, let's go back to sketch comedy, all that. So I would watch all that as I'm getting picked on in school, and then I can go watch all that. And it's like, on the one hand, it's like, okay, I can make fun of myself. But then on the other hand, it's like, all right, this is portrayed to me this way. How come it's now it's not translating? And that was like one of those first times in my life where I realized, oh,
the narrative's different.
The real world is a little different.
Yeah.
And I wasn't one of those where it's like, I was like, oh, well, fuck them. It was more like a
realization.
Okay, so they're portraying either what the world should be like, or they're portraying an aspect of that real world, but it's not my real. And sadly, it's not my real world.
And I mean that fiction wouldn't be fun if it was represented accurately.
No.
Even nonfiction, I think there needs
it would just be
flares.
A painful reminder of your everyday life,
pulling a Band-Aid off over and over again.
Yeah. So, what are some other good shows? Like, it's not so because we've talked about like late 80s to mid 90s.
Well, I mean, you know, and we talked about sci-fi shows, but we skipped right over Outer Limits, Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Those were profound, generally pretty profound. Like, and to prove it, they just did the reboot 2 years ago, and no single episode was nearly as profound as the original run.
Exactly.
Even with Jordan Peele writing it and hosting it.
Oh, I know.
It was just, it's not remarkable. You could watch both seasons and I would ask you to tell me one story from them and you wouldn't remember them.
Or even while we're on the topic of, let's go back to the Alien Nation.
Oh my God, man. Yeah. That show was so cool.
It was.
We could use a reboot of that right now. I could see that being done well. Because it was a movie and a show.
Yeah. And this show started in 1987, I believe. Star Trek: The Next Generation.
So the best Star Trek.
It's the best Star Trek.
Yeah.
Fight me on that.
No,
you'll lose. Not you, Rem. I'm telling
no, I agree with
it,
though.
You know,
make it so.
Jean-Luc Picard.
Yeah, the greatest.
Data had sex on that show, for crying out loud.
It's fucking Data, bro.
Yeah, he's the man.
Little whiny Wesley.
Yeah, the Whoopi was on that show.
Whoopi Goldberg was the bartender.
Whoopi was the bartender on the Starship.
She was essentially like the Cantina from Star Wars in one person.
Yeah, and she's basically the equivalent of Mo.
Yeah, she just gives wisdom and like you could tell like it seemed like half her stuff was just improv by her. Oh, sugar. Yeah. You know, it's like God, that Whoopi energy is just so pure.
Man, we've covered so much.
It's hard when you're in the heart of it because you're in the storm trying to remember and pull.
You're right.
Okay, Wonder Years.
Wonder Years was a great show. Loved it.
So just like my generation connected to that. Our generation connected to that show like so intensely because we'd never seen ourselves. Oh, dude, my so-called life. You're right. There's too much to talk about.
Exactly. And I think my wife would want to be on for that one because she absolutely loves Jared Leto.
Yeah, Jared Leto's a heck of an interesting guy. But even if she's a fan, bad news. Yeah. That dude's having a kill streak. It's not going well for him at all. Post his weird Joker, he's a really good actor, and I think he would have done some really interesting things. And I think there was an injustice. Is he the worst Joker? Yeah, maybe. But it's also we spent the least amount of time with him. Yeah, I think Leto got shit on. I think he's a really interesting actor, but he's making Mobius or whatever. Morbius is terrible. Like he's just making these terrible films now, and I don't know. Plus, you know about his cult? You know about his cult?
Oh, yeah. His last good role was in the Dallas
Buyers Club.
Yeah. He was him and Matthew McConaughey were phenomenal.
Well, after that, it was like, oh, this guy's playing the Joker. If he played the Joker the way he played the AIDS victim, it would have been cooler. Mm-hmm. It would have been more haunting. He just did too much. That's it. He did too much.
And folks, that's how long that Jared Leto's been with us. We can talk about
We grew up with him.
Yeah, we can talk about 1993 to today.
I hated him when My So-Called Life was on because every girl I dated sweated him so bad.
Yeah.
He was a beautiful man that played. He was like a skinny version of me. I hated that. I hated him.
How dare you?
How dare you make
All
my
right.
girlfriends have a feeling for lust outside of anyone but me?
Well, I think we covered a lot of ground, and hope people, could get some good takeaways from what we talked about on the show today.
Oh, wait. Someone's at the door.
Oh,
Hold on. Let me just... Hey, you guys going to be in here much longer? The building's closed down, you know?
Bazinga!
That's the old janitor of our building. He just came in and he's giving us the old get out.
Yeah, he wants some. I'm not going to make that joke.
Yeah, I felt something bad coming.
Yeah, I was going someplace dark.
They're doing some Pornhub snuff filming after we leave.
Oh man! All right, so yeah, until the next time, folks. Sorry about the rabbit hole at the end, but hey, this shit is going to happen.
Don't be sorry.
But as always, we look forward to you guys joining us again on the next XOP. And until next time, take care.
Have a wonderful night, people. We appreciate you.